Oh yeah, you made it to part 3 of the episode with Taliy of Creative Society. Ooh. Couple of announcements. We got a live show coming up. Toss is opening for Blatzenia March 3rd at Tractor Brewing. Come on down if you're in town. And if you can't catch us live on the internet rehearsing. Twitch.tv/delaostudios. Man, you're looking so fine today. Hit that subscribe and like button. It's free. Just like all of our content will always be. Enjoy the last part of our 3-part episode.
Okay. Anyway, I want to tell the story for you. So, when we just started this beef with Google, what they call it, DOJ, Department of Justice, they just started antitrust case in an attempt to break up Google. So the easiest thing for us would be to actually join this call to break up Google. But we feel like this is already happening out there, and Google will be broken up because it's a huge monopoly. And the thing is why we say nationalized, because that is the only way to make this company obey the First Amendment. Can I have some of that as well?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, I had left mine in the other room and I saw that was unopened, so I was like, fuck, I'm going to go for it. But we want a glass too? We can go for it.
Either way.
Yeah.
I'm cool with it.
Okay, cool.
You're like brother to me out there.
Already, yeah. It's very human. I'm not going to lie, there's been many shares what with many different things going on. That's just what we do as humans, you know.
I think there's nothing wrong with
No.
bottle. Yeah, so of course, then people started to asking like, how do people even gonna pick up this idea of?
Do we have Jason in? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
but did he want to be included in this last
he
portion?
said he would love to.
Before we fucking forget his ass and just leave him in the dust.
Yeah,
he's gonna be all WTF, mate.
Mm-hmm. Please join. No.
Hello?
Hey,
Hello,
man.
Mr. Jason.
We remembered you.
That's cool. Oh, that's funny.
We don't see your camera, Jake. There it is.
There we are.
Nice. How long you been in Detroit, Michigan? Is that your hometown?
Yeah, this is my home state. I'm actually in Garden City. It's just easier that way. But I spend quite amount of my time in Detroit doing kung fu.
You do actual martial arts, kung fu?
Yeah, at the Detroit Kung Fu Academy.
Dude, that's wild. Do you compete?
No, I've been doing it for about 8 years now, coming up this March.
Wow, that's really cool. Is it a special type of kung fu? Do you have a favorite form or animal form?
It's a Wing Sung, which means eternal spring. In the Western world, it's known as Wing Chun.
Wing Chun, okay.
Yeah,
is that Ip Man style?
By Donnie Yen. Yeah. By Yip Man. Yep.
Very cool. Hopefully you never have to use it, but it's better to know how to not have to use it.
Yeah, I agree.
Welcome back, Taliy.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Is his mic off?
It is.
I think my mic is off.
There we go. He's back.
So I've been just sharing our stream on Twitch with my friends, and the feedback was so positive. People love it, and people say,
"Oh, right
this
on,
is
cool."
Such an interesting format." And seeing us on Twitch, we've been broadcasting our streams on Twitch as well, but it was never our priority, and it's so cool that we're actually live right now. So, guys, well, what we're seeing right now is that DOJ, Department of Justice, started a huge antitrust case against Google. They're trying to break this monopoly into multiple different companies, kind of like they did in 1911 with Standard Oil. Rockefeller's company was a huge giant, and it started take over the whole industry of America and started competing with the government for the power. And one thing about the government, they don't like anyone to challenge their power. So right now when they see Google is being so monopolist in this field and in the media, they understand that political parties might change, but Google remains, and they be more powerful. They don't have to obey international laws and treaties. They have their internal guidelines, and they kind of play in this between the laws and jurisdictions in this gray area where they kind of have been getting away with a lot of stuff. So they lost 2 antitrust cases already, smaller ones, and now they're going for a big one for the search engine. If we see that coming, that's going to be a big win-win for everyone because we're going to have multiple smaller companies competing against each other on the market of search engines and, first of all, advertisements. And that's going to be good for the market. Like the other thing that people don't actually realize that what they missing is that ChatGPT by OpenAI is going to take over the market while the government is busy with the Alphabet company and breaking them apart.
It's too fast.
And the very same thing happened actually to the Alphabet company. They took market by the storm when government was too busy with an antitrust case against Microsoft, which Microsoft lost, but then never was broken apart because it knows ways to make good relationships with important people. Bill Gates' family is coming from Seattle, and they've been selling their software to governments since the very beginning. They say, oh, it's a billionaire who made himself. No, he had a very rich story with his parents actually backing him up. But how Microsoft took market by the storm, it was when government was busy with antitrust case against IBM. So when IBM, this giant, was too busy dealing with their legal stuff, Microsoft popped up, this young...
Wait a minute, I'm starting to see a trend here.
Exactly. That was my point. That right now we're just gonna see the very same thing happening because they
with
are
ChatGPT.
Yeah, they are busy with the past. Google is past. Either way, it's gonna lose because TikTok is just slaughtering their video streaming market. They're trying to roll out this YouTube short clips,
Actually,
whatever.
It's doing a lot more than that. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, but TikTok is actually slashing into the search engine. My generation and the younger generation. So our generation and the younger generation use TikTok for searches.
To look up stuff.
To find reliable people and reliable goods, and Google can't monopolize on it.
Oof, that's a big hit.
That's a huge hit.
Oh, man. Yeah, man. I don't know.
So what we actually not seeing is that even if this monopoly will be broken apart, but not being forced, or our laws will not change to include the social media platforms and search engines to be transparent and work in accordance with the First Amendment, because we know that in 1791 there was no social media, so it could not be included into the law, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to adjust our law to the current problems. The big problem is that some amendments took hundreds of years to be implemented into the law, from the proposal to actual implementation. And that is why, guys, we have no this is too luxurious for us to think that we have that much amount of time to enjoy these freedoms. And the freedoms we have been enjoying in the Western world, they were only given to us because there was a competition with the communist regimes that were providing, despite their image of oppressors and so on, 8-hour Labor Day. That is why Western world has to do the same. Otherwise, we're going to lose in this image game. And, right now there is no competition. And no competition is never a good thing. Like monopoly, whether it comes to global domination of one political power or within the country, it's not a good thing. On the other hand, what else is happening on the market? We are seeing that Google just laid off 12,000 employees, and those are very, like, as you and your brother said today, those people were specifically trained to work in the Google framework, and they have specific skills. So if the company would see their value, they would still keep them employed even through the period of some market goes up and down, whatever. But we need those people for the future. In Google, they realize very clear they're not gonna be needing the service of those people in the future, because they know, because they invested into OpenAI solutions as well. If you check who donated, because you cannot buy shares of OpenAI on the market, it's not a public company, but investments were made by Microsoft, Google, and Elon Musk personally. Those Microsoft made a few donations. One of them was over $1 billion. And they use servers of Microsoft for all of their solutions. So Microsoft
wasn't it something like $10 billion
in different tranches,
but
absolutely,
ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we also know, like myself working in the Silicon Valley company and multiple friends of mine, we see how we used to have multiple solutions for different kind of tooling, very specific tools and very convenient. They were specific. They had some kind of special feeling, like people would put their heart and soul into it, and it was working fine. And right now, all of a sudden, we all started switching into this Microsoft Office solution because it's cheaper, a little bit more efficient. It absolutely heartless. You don't see that kind of vibe and design and everything. It looks very Microsoft-ish, but it works. It's and we're seeing this trend, and I'm like, oh wow, can you imagine how many small companies are gonna go bankrupt simply because people gonna switch to Microsoft AI solution and this kind of like all-in-one package deals from this company. They're making a big bet on AI, and they are backed up by AI kind of being dependent on them because all the servers they use them from there. Of course, there is competitions. We know Amazon can always step in and offer their solutions for hosting. But for now, things as they are, we're seeing that Microsoft is kind of dominated in the market with OpenAI. If nothing is being done in this field, we're going to see the market changing by a lot in the upcoming year and a half. Most of the entry-level jobs in the software engineering will be gone. So if past 4 years you've been studying that, you might have a very hard time getting employment within your field of expertise. And people who already losing their jobs. Last year, it was about 150,000 people who lost their jobs in tech, and that was kind of a big deal. But only in January, there was 18,000... oops, I'm so sorry for this one. Hopefully, Mike's didn't pick this up.
So the mic picked it up. Jeez. All right. You probably heard all those sound effects go off as we... Can you hear us now, Jason?
Of course.
Okay, yeah. So so sorry about that. There was some static
Not
electricity. Or a ghost or something. Close that door.
No worries.
All right.
Nice.
Oh. Wow. Breaking momentum. We're going to pull a fortune cookie for you, Jason.
So how'd you get started doing this?
The fortune cookies?
Yeah, that and the podcast.
So, I don't know, man. I just figured doing a podcast is probably a smart move to do for the long game. I feel like it's a very effective and quick way to network with people. Like, I'm genuinely sitting across the table from people I would never be talking to. Like, it's amazing who's willing to talk to me just because I set up some cameras in the studio. It took some time to
It took a lot.
such a noob. This creates better atmosphere.
Okay. I think we have
Sound is
our...
back.
Yeah.
Oh man, my brother thinks that my wall heater creates static electricity, and the camera switching and stuff back there is causing some static. So, yeah, sorry about those technical issues. We're gonna get you
You have
this.
interference. Oh, good.
We're gonna do it for you. I got you here, Jason.
Nice fortune cookie.
Yeah, and then you can give me your take on what it's telling you. Hopefully, it's a new one.
Well,
I really enjoy fortune cookies, actually. Such a novelty.
You don't have friends, just people who feel sorry for you.
Yep, that's how life goes.
That's how I love how you accept it. There's no combat. That's just how life goes. Oh man, you've got friends. I don't know you.
You have friends,
I think you have friends.
You do have friends.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think that this question, the question of friends is actually very important because where I'm coming from, we don't call everyone friends. You have to be, to call somebody friend, it has to be like deserved. It has to be.
In English, we might distinguish this with acquaintance and a friend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
but
actually, it's really interesting. You're both invoking this conversation because in Michigan, you're either a brother or you're a sister, or you're an acquaintance.
There is no in between.
There's no in between. So.
yeah, camaraderie. I mean, it's universal among humans. We need this. We have a need to bond and to be together on the same page.
Yeah, the difference in our genes is so small that we basically on the level like if anyone would check our genes, it's almost indistinguishable. We actually have all DNA material and we're all the same people. In some sense, we're all relatives, like even literally, because the difference between us is so minor, it makes no sense to fight because of the differences. And I have a friend from Hawaii and he grew up in Argentina and he told me, well, Taliy, maybe 100 years from now, all people gonna mix up and they have one race and then all the changes gonna be eliminated. And they're going to be living friendship and peace. And I was like, no, Matthias, they will never do that because they're going to find one thing, the shape of the ear that's going to be different, and they're going to start hating each other on that topic. If we're not going to find common language right now, like people can find always some manipulative things. But the things that unite us is so much greater that it makes sense to actually, work together for the common goal.
Reminds me of the movie The Giver.
What about it?
Your little narrative reminded me of the movie The Giver, where
was
they
it
were
about?
trying to make everything so perfect, and then they come to realize that it was the uniqueness and love and the sharing of experience that.
Oh yeah, also Equilibrium was about that. They were like, oh, people are emotional, that's why they do bad decisions, and they came up with a drug that takes out emotions. And that was very interesting thing because people, like our ability to be emotional and to, communicate with each other, not just in the verbal way, but also in the way of just, something you can feel the energy, like what's behind the message that people comment. If somebody's sitting across the table from you and treats you like a relative or a brother, that's very different from the way they're gonna say the very same thing with a different message behind it. In here they call it passive aggressive or whatever, when people trying to look nice, but you can feel the mean message behind, right? And especially it's very common in California. When I've been living there, I've seen some people living their lifestyle, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, Talia, I don't know, I have this panic attacks where I cannot control myself and everything. Like, of course, because you cannot control your anger towards other people, so you cannot control those reactions caused by that thing. When people feel anger, even the chemicals inside of their body start producing, which are damaging, which are destroying destroying
Not
our
only
bodies.
that, they're addictive in feeling. Is the adrenaline is an addictive feeling. So when you're making yourself angry over and over, what you're doing is actually causing a subconscious desire to become angry again, and it creates this loop of where you're doing it on purpose but subconsciously to get that adrenaline rush of being angry. I say
I
this
used to
all
be so angry.
me too. I say this out of personal experience because I still do get angry. It's a daily thing to, just manage emotions, whether it's with exercise and meditation, prayer, whatever it is. But yeah, it definitely has this way of wanting to come out on its own,
Not just that, but I was shocked to find out that even, some people, they cry, they make hysterics, and they try to victimize themselves, portray themselves as victims. And that is addictive as well. They found out that after crying a lot, your body takes it as a stress and boosts endorphins into your body. So people sometimes do these things because it's addictive as well. So as, for example, physical exercises, which is much better way to also traumatize your body on the micro level and then receive endorphins because your body is trying to block these pain signals that are coming from your body and boost it with a little bit of happy hormones. So all these things, they have
Seems a bit masochistic.
Well, it is, but there's a message here too, because there's even more that goes into it, like cold exposure, doing like cold plunges or out in the air, and it is the intentional going directly into the pain to on the other side reach the point of peace. And I think a story I can describe here is a storm is coming. And there's a group of cows, and they get scared of this storm, the rain and the thunder. And as the cows are running away from the storm is chasing the cows. And eventually the cows get stuck in the storm because they're kind of going in the same direction. Well, buffalo, they do the opposite. Something in their instincts tells a buffalo, run into the storm. So what happens is they go into the storm, and what happens is the storm passes over them quickly, and they get through the storm into fresh watered pasture on the other side. And this is kind of thematically like what we can do with our morals is choose the hard path on purpose, and you can and that is an intentional way of channeling that suffering to get to the right place. Same thing with a gag reflex of a grizzly bear. There's a story of a guy who was getting attacked by a grizzly bear, and he remembered a story of his grandma had an article where bears have a gag reflex and you have to punch it. So he reached his arm further into the bear's throat to hit that gag reflex and actually stop the bear from attacking him. Who would ever think to reach further into the mouth of the bear, right? So there's this... It does seem masochistic to an extent, but there are real neurological reactions to things like cold plunges with epinephrine and norepinephrine, like the dopaminergic reactions in the brain. It really does make you happier and more calm.
I think the same applies to making something that you feel inside is the right thing to do, but might be not accepted by the society. Like, for example, our project, when we say about completely changing the format of the society from consumeristic to creative, people were thinking that we're joking at first. But then people could not understand what we mean by that. Then they were like making fun of us in the BBC articles where they say, oh, this group of climate deniers here pushing their narrative. And then they saw us as competitors and now trying to ban some channels on YT and other platforms. And we've seen that slowly but surely people do understand that this is the only alternative to the current state because we offer the solution to the challenges. And it feels like running like buffaloes through that very peak of the storm right now because we feel that something is happening. The tension is building up.
I wouldn't compare it to that. It definitely feels like someone tied bricks to my feet and I'm running in molasses sometimes when, so it is what it is.
But you know what's interesting? That many people picked up this message thanks to TikTok, actually. We've seen some videos. Somebody just made a video of them watching our forum on TikTok, and that video got like 3 point something million views on TikTok. It just went viral over the day. The hashtag "Our Survival is in Unity" was all over the TikTok. People started making reactions. People started sharing their reaction to the forum. Then we went to Twitter, and we've seen that people were puzzled why no media outlet is covering this story, which is tracking so much attention. Basically, every climate channel on YouTube is being bombarded with questions. What about the prediction model that Creative Society presented on their forum? Because we came up with this mathematical model of progression of cataclysms that is happening right now that shows clearly that within like 4 or 5 years from now, the cataclysm's gonna get to the point where our economical GDP is not gonna be able to make up for the destruction made by those. Like, Florida just...
So you're saying shit's coming? Like real shit's like earthquakes and tsunamis and shit?
Absolutely.
And they know it.
Absolutely.
And they know it, and it's been written about in some books, and other people know about it. So it's just like, how do we get the message out?
They know about it. The problem is that when we ask in construction companies, why do you not build vertical farms when technology is right there, everything is right there? And they say, well, because there is no demand. Nobody's ordering those. And we say, well, what do people order? They say bunkers. Doomsday bunkers went up by 2,000% only in Texas alone. But it's not only in Texas, it's all over the place. They build those in Norway, in Switzerland, all over the... New Zealand as well. And it's funny because they pick in the places for example, the very seed bunker where they gathered all the seeds from all over the world in Norway. They build it on the geothermally active zone. So what we're saying, this very hot magma, which we talked about at the very beginning, it's rising up and it's melting tectonic plates from below. So tectonic plates become thinner. That is why much more heat coming from the inside of our planet. And those doomsday bunkers, the deeper you go into the ground, the sooner it's going to melt by rising flows of magma.
That's funny. They're the cows running away from the storm, which
they're
eventually going to get caught in the storm for trying to run away from it. So
that's right.
That is exactly so. And what should be done if we would be healthy, normal buffaloes, we should all be running towards first of all, determining zones on our planet which will be suitable for us to survive the extreme rise of the climatic change. It's gonna last for about a decade, and the peak will be in the mid-30s. But life will be unbearable if we do nothing by the end of this decade already.
I think a lot is being done, but it's not being disclosed to the public. I think the entire United States military has underground navigational access across the entire country. It's underground.
They hoping that those military people will be there to protect them from us, because majority of the people will, 2 years ago they were literally fighting, bumping each other into the face with fists for toilet paper when toilet paper was finishing on shelves. What do you think is going to happen to this?
Somebody shot somebody here for toilet paper at the beginning of the pandemic, a mile up the road from my house.
And
that really going to be shitting
that was
your
toilet
pants.
paper. That was about people who might as well just find an alternative.
They used a rag, my dude.
Yeah, what the heck?
But we're talking about empty shelves, and we're talking about much more serious things. When something that happened in Florida, when the hurricane came and destroyed so many infrastructure, bridges, we have these landslides in state of California, and the whole part of PCH just went into the ocean. And this is not normal. We've seen that the wildfires, then huge earthquakes, 6.4 just like a couple of weeks ago in North California. This is not normal. This is a sign of something really, really bad. And then there was a September article that Los Angeles might experience an earthquake 45 to 48 times stronger than the Northridge in 1993, 94. This is alarming, but these red flags are all over the place. But on Twitter, when we posted our stuff, we got response from the USGS that calm down. There's nothing to worry about. We we asked them to comment on the topic of Yellowstone volcano, saying that caldera is rising because additional amount of magma is coming from below and it's melting. They found out that the magma inside of the chamber starts liquefying, and the amount of liquefied magma has risen from 5% to 20-something%.
Whoa.
So, like, what's causing this magma to melt and rise? And those are two different articles. And they say, oh, those articles are not quite exact, blah, blah, blah. And those are different researchers. And we're like, well, guys, if you cannot add 2 + 2, and you're doing the same stuff that scientists did in La Palma, well, we know from Spain, 3.5 months in advance they knew. But then they said coffins are cheaper than evacuation of people and possible panic. So we are the only ones who saying, guys, we're going to have this big storm coming up. We are the buffaloes that see that storm that's facing and coming fast in our direction. And we say, let's take action now. Let's unite our scientists. And the best one work in the closed military complex in each country. We know that whoever you see there on YouTube portraying themselves as scientists, this United Nations IPCC guys, those are talking heads. They're like Kardashians of the science. They are not real scientists.
Have you guys done any research on the Taos Earthship communities? Are you aware of what an Earthship is?
Some project where
this has been going on since 1970s. It's like 50-year-old project. Jason, are you aware what an Earthship is?
Sounds like
no.
Noah's
I
Ark.
mean, I've heard used in different contexts. I mean, in New Age religion, but I'd like to
New Age religion.
hear what
Oh man,
say more. I'm just saying
it's
knowledge-wise, so
interesting.
I'd like to hear what you
So basically it's building homes out of recycled materials, and these materials are mostly recycled tires and bottles, and that creates the foundation. Now the science aspect of it is you create hills, you build certain windows at like a certain angle facing south to maximize the amount of sun. Heat can ventilate in and through a top hatch. It's basically botanical on the inside and out. Water is filtered through 3 separate parts collected through the top. It's a completely self-sustaining home that is also clean for the environment. Cameron, are we able to maybe bring up some pictures of Earthship homes in Taos? They're beautiful, and then actually the communities there are at a point where they're selling courses and teaching how to do it from step 1, which is getting recycled tires for free, because there's a lot of auto body shops that just get rid of them. And this is something that's been on my radar since I was a teenager. It's kind of like my life goal is to end up in one of these. But, you know, what's the point if more people don't do it, you know? So there's an artistic element, but it's highly scientific to the point where you can grow most, if not all, of your food on the property, heat the house entirely with the sun and proper ventilation systems. It's a trip. And there's definitely communities that are building things like this. And I'm wondering if with 3D printing or other resource material type networking that it could be expedited or more accessible to local communities.
Super cool. This is exactly why we should be talking and sharing things and working together.
Some of these,
instead
some of these guys,
wind turbines, the oceans.
yeah, some of these guys have even gone to communities in Africa to show people in their communities how to build houses with recycled materials, and that's the whole point. Is because it's working with the poverty. Is you don't go buy the materials to build the foundation. Of course, when you get to a certain level of architecture, you're going to want to build and add stuff. But the base idea is pretty cool, I think.
It's pretty cool, and it can be taken to the next level with 3D printing. Have you seen those machines that you put that machine out there and it simply creates a house
buildings,
out of nothing? So quick, and there is no human labor invested into it. Like, machine has to be done and created and so on. But at some point, all of it can be automated. We can provide people with houses. And there is a question of land. You know, this false narrative has been pushed by the very same people that there is not enough land on our planet. And we calculated with the Despommier, Mr. Despommier, he's the one of the top researchers on the vertical farming. And vertical farming is amazing because you can put so much more CO2, which makes your stuff grow so much faster. Like there are these machines which put additional CO2.
I would investigate electroculture because I think you can also see phenomenal results with putting concentrated forms of electricity into your vegetation. Not so much pumping extra CO2.
That is a good point. And in addition to that, you can harvest up to 30 times a year instead of 2 times in the field. So you get so much more for investing so much less. And guess what happens then? You have all this stuff going in vertical forms, multiple layers, multiple levels in the building in the middle of the city. That means imagine the amount of farmlands, this useless territory that is free now.
Well, it's almost useless at this point with all of the chemicals that Monsanto and Roundup have put on everything in the dirt. It's become arid and unhospitable to living matter.
But beautiful new cities can be built everywhere. Everywhere, because with these technologies we can build and provide.
Well, Saudi Arabia is working on the wall.
That's
what is a 65-kilometer long wall where everything is within a 5-minute walk.
I feel like that project is aimed at attraction tourist attention more.
You think so? I think it's a test model of a controlled, community.
You know what?
City.
We started receiving a lot of comments from people who probably misunderstand concept of creative society and somehow took that city as an example of smart cities, and possibly the cities we presented at our conference and the forum. And people started bombarding us with saying that we want to build a wall everywhere. And I was like, what the heck these people are talking about? Saudi Arabia has too much money. They have new prince and they want to attract attention. That's why they started making Burning Man-like festival in the desert. They opened up and right now they're trying to build this huge tower which going to be doubled in height compared to the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa. They announced it in December 2022. That is insane because it's a Muslim country. It's extremely religious country. And according to their prophecies in their religion, they say that the end times of the world will come when Arabs gonna start competing with each other in building tall buildings.
It sounds almost like the Tower of Babel and the race to the sky. And it sounds like we keep doing the same shit over and over throughout history.
It is.
Have you guys heard of the egg theory?
What is it? There are many egg theories.
The egg theory I know is that this whatever you're experiencing right now in your one life and you see all these other humans and all the other lives, that's you. And you're going to take a turn being every single person. So when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to a reflection of myself in some form or another. You know, when someone's telling me or shouting at me from road rage on the rage, that is me yelling at me for something. Right?
In a spiritual sense, it is so because we are all even closer. We are all the same DNA.
Well, you were saying that with the DNA, but I mean, in a sense of a fractalized, not fully conscious form of consciousness. I mean, what if we are one brain with each person being a cell of the brain? So we are all talking and communicating, and it's trying to turn on.
What if we use our consciousness as a tool for communication, but behind that there is an observer, and there is an observer who's observing and choosing which thoughts to pay attention to, and this is what the true self is. That's an interesting theory. And consciousness, there are multiple studies on consciousness. It's extremely interesting field of research and probably one of the least researched things because there are multiple studies that prove that thoughts that pop up in our head actually do not appear inside of our brain. They kind of like radio waves.
So where is it coming from?
Out in the field.
Your brain, your body, your physical matter is more like an antenna to receive the radio transmission which is coming out. I believe
that's that. That's closer to it, yeah.
I believe that, but I also believe that it is one giant radio transmission that has a lot of tentacles, which we experience as subjective consciousness.
You know, one of the most deepest researches on brain was started by his name is Bechterev was, and he started this brain research institute in Moscow, and he dedicated his whole life to that. And his granddaughter, she continued the work. So it's like over 100 years of the research of this brain institute with this family line. And recently, in the beginning of this 21st century, she came up with, because she was like the most knowledgeable person in the field of research. And what she said was shocking. She said that it is impossible that human brain could evolve from any other species on Earth. That it's so over complex and so complicated that it has extraterrestrial origin, and it did not evolve on Earth. So when something like that coming from the most knowledgeable, the most respected scientist in the field, that's something that's worth much more attention that it actually received. And she was also saying that the nature of brain, that consciousness is not stored in brain. Brain is more like a tool for us to receive and pass signals. But even the memory, even the long time memory, is not stored on the brain. It's stored somewhere where we could say like a cloud drive, and our brain is just kind of like laptop through which we access.
You grow new cells as you age. Every single cell in your body is a new cell. When you were a child, you were a bunch of cells in physical matter. Now you are a completely different new set of physical matter, yet you still have the memories from when you were. I mean, it takes time for all of the cells in the hair to grow out and fall off and regenerate. What is it, every 7 years? A human fully can...
And the interesting part, why do these cells age? Because it's a scientifically proven fact that certain kind of cells do not age. For example, cancer cells. But why the same technology could not be applied to human cells? When they were studying it, they noticed that there is such a component of our cells called telomere. And this telomere is kind of like building bricks. It's kind of like a self-building railroad, like the train that goes through railroad and keeps building the railroad. This thing somehow just every time it splits, it stops building this railroad one step shorter, and our cells become older. And what behind the thing is the informational fulfillment. So the cells, if they manipulate it, they can actually build those railroads of our DNAs, and like whatever is needed, whatever time is needed. And that cancer cells prove it. They've been taken from somebody in 1930s, and they still growing, and they never noticed not a single cell from that cancer thing to age. It never aged. It's the very same. But somehow it's happening in human body to our natural cells. And the question is like, how do we take the best qualities of that thing and apply it to our body so our bodies wouldn't age?
Well, here's a theory. What if it was originally, or like if her theory, the brain scientist you said who followed her grandfather's study, if her theory was that the human brain is of extraterrestrial origin, I mean, come on, you can connect one dot to the other, right?
That it was programmed to age, because
that originally we were programmed not to age, and at some point they had to say we're going to stick this thing in here to where they do age, right?
Because
and then maybe the cancer cells are like kind of like a clue of what the cells used to be.
This reminds me the story of Atlantis. It's kind of a myth, but it's not at the very same time, because too many proofs proving that this was existing there. And that theory that Greek gods, that there was a civilization that was destroyed 12,000 years ago at the time of the previous climate cycle. Mm-hmm. And that civilization went to the peak of technological development about like ours, but they actually came up with a life prolongation, drugs. And in every country in this world, there are mythology about magical things. In China, they believe magical pears that gods were eating to prolongate their life. In Greece, it was ambrosia. In other parts of the world as well. In some parts of Europe, they say this magic apples, whatever. But the thing is that the elites of the Atlantis developed this technology, but then only the elites, only the few were able to, they kind of took over the power, they took over this technology, and that made their elites to live over 1,000 years and rule the society. And what they started doing with the society, they divided into, like, for a little bit of time they were developing and everything was nice, but then of course human nature takes its control, and they started dividing and making wars for fun. So the main ruler, the main god, Zeus, had many kids, and they started competing with each other. It was forbidden for them to develop technologies, but they were allowed to play with human DNAs. And that's when they started to try to improve their tribes, to give them certain preferred kind of advantages in the battlefields. And some of them came up stronger physically, some of them stronger in the mental sense. And that is why,
it's almost like a betting game. It's almost like a race, the human race. And here we see the etymological clues.
But all the technologies were stored at the island of Atlantis, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, kind of where Azori Islands are right now. And that is why when these two tribes would stand in the battlefield or whatever, and one of them would pray to the gods, those guys, through the technologies, could actually see what's going on over there. And if they wanted, they could just press a button and send missiles to that point. And then we're coming up with archaeological evidence of explosions, of nuclear explosions in India that are 12,000 years old. And they cannot explain why. They have this thing that even the glass...
No. It's not that they can't explain. It's the way that we address history. And we're now getting to that point where we can address these things, because people, for whatever reason, we've been conditioned to only look at history as two viewpoints, that history somehow unfolds without this arbitrarily elite class that directs it, so that it's just this random sequence of events that unfolds, versus having to look at it as if it's class warfare, and then when you look at it as if it's class warfare, it really conforms to the idea of Occam's razor, that the simplest reason is right there, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at it, like Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, Brian Forrester, and many of the guys who are doing this out of their own pockets, doing stuff like that, those are the modern day guys who are studying archaeological evidence and really trying to just get a conversation going instead of closing our eyes when we see something that doesn't conform to our beliefs, right? And it's really interesting because you get to have conversations like this and discuss it from the point of view when you look at, okay, if you have this class of people that are elitists and had this ability, they're doing the same thing today.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
But I have a friend, and he's told me, because I like to fuck around with him with the flat Earth thing, just because it just makes him mad. So I like to ponder upon it. And he's like, man, if it's flat and there's a wall somewhere, why don't you go? Genuinely, why don't you go? And I really thought about it. And then, you research and you see some people are trying, and then some military bases are trying to stop them. And you see further, there's only one tourist spot above or below Argentina, just one spot they take you to. So there's a lot of interesting things about why you can't go or you wouldn't go. But what if it's that easy? What if getting out of all of this
Truman Show?
What if the classism is really having enough willpower to get a group of people to just go to the edge, and then at the other edge they say, you made it. Everyone in there is fucked because they don't want to leave. It's as simple as that. And then they tell it through the media and through these stories and these allegorical claims, like exactly the Truman Show. It's just right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, like it's a physical wall. He just knocked at the edge of the skyline.
It really was just as easy as trying to go that hard. And then, it's looking at documentaries. Humans were doing it. Germans were doing it. Americans were doing it. They were going and building bases in Antarctica. I was actually watching a documentary on YouTube. They had dogs out there. They were making camp. It was pretty cool. It was a cool-ass documentary.
It's actually very interesting why they decided not to make any developments in Antarctica.
Are you talking about the Antarctic Treaty? That whole thing
Yeah,
where all the
the-
governments in the world and agreed we're just
All-
not going to go there.
We're just not. There is a huge amount of resources, and we're just not gonna touch them. Sounds like
Right.
that's that thing that no one ever said. Like that they say, that's that words that no one ever said. But with Antarctica, it's getting even more interesting because they recently found out that there are pyramids, which are bigger in size than the Great Pyramids of Giza, and there are these images where I don't know, maybe we can pull it up if our technical team is not completely asleep yet. But
He's
these
got work in the
pyramids of
morning, too.
Antarctica, it's the very recent thing that just came up on the news not so long time ago, maybe a few years ago. And it's shocking because if there are pyramids in there and there is zero chance you're gonna convince me that those are not human-made because they have perfect shape. They're even aligned with North Pole, South Pole, and the sides. So somebody built them.
No,
there.
it's mass psychosis. No, I'm just.
I mean, that's what they're trying. It's a could be, but then that would be the mass gaslight. Don't believe
Yeah.
any of it. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing.
That's why, like, okay. Another part of it is that nobody is putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, because when you actually start searching these things, there are so many different pieces of the puzzle. There is a huge stone which was found in Peru or Ecuador cave. That stone is like 12,000-year-old stone on which there is a map of the world.
And what does the map look like?
Exactly like today, but with some additional island in between Europe and America.
Oh, like an Atlantis Island?
Exactly. And some additional islands where Galapagos Islands are right now on the Pacific side of the South America. And what that stone shows, it shows one line, one white line that crosses the whole globe. It looks like a globe. And there is a dot in the Mesopotamia. Exactly. There is a big dot exactly at the spot where civilization 6,000 years later all of a sudden appeared out of nowhere. And there is a ton of evidence exactly like that stone, exactly like pyramids, exactly like what Graham Hancock found in Indonesia and in other countries around the world. It's exactly like cities in Siberia, very old one, ancient one, and they have so much knowledge. And what actually they show that there was period of time, they call it matriarchy, but there was period of time prior to 6,000 years ago where there were massive cities built with thousands of people living in them, and there was nothing that would say, no archaeological evidence that say that they would be preparing for wars at all. No tools.
It looks like people were trying to warn future people, right?
They were
With
yeah.
any means necessary. It's like maybe they had high technology, like computers like us, but they're like, maybe these people won't know how to turn them on. We got to carve it into rocks for them.
They had leftovers of the technologies from the Atlantis civilization, but I think because of what happened to Atlantis when technologies actually led to the elites to dictate the whole society, they decided not to develop technologies for a very long time, and that played a bad joke on our civilization because technologies were banned for a very long time. And right now we need them like never before, because without technologies, we're not gonna pass this cycle of 12,000-year cataclysms.
Here's an idea. What if time is not linear, but it's circular, and we are Atlantis? And the point is to warn ourselves about what's going to happen. And the story just goes in a circle, but you get to experience it from different points of view.
You go in Inception like 3 levels down on this one. That's interesting. I like how your brain works.
Because the thing is if you think about the movement of time, past and future don't actually exist.
What if you dream inside of your dream?
I mean, think about it. We're measuring something that doesn't exist. The past is a memory and the future is imagination. There's really only the present moment. We cannot access other parts of the timeline other than what's happening right now.
You know,
what is that?
It
What
depends
is it?
who's observing. Like, I absolutely agree with you. It depends on the point of the observer. If you are the person living in the moment, it looks like now is not present at all, because now slips away even between me beginning this phrase and ending this phrase, now, was never there. Now slipped away. There was only past and future, and now always slips away. So there is no now.
But there is only the now.
And there is only now. And there is only now at the very same time. But what's interesting, you bring me to another topic. When quantum physics when they try to test how particles...
The Hadron Collider, CERN, the Large Hadron Particle Acceleration, is that what you're talking about?
I was talking about two-slit experiment, when they shoot in the electron through one slit and they put observer and two slits. And they noticed that thing behaves differently. It looks like a particle when there is an observer, and it looks different when when there is no observer. I think, guys, we're diving too deep into this thing.
Yeah,
so
we're getting
we're
way
gonna
far.
have to.
We may have to follow up on a future episode, whether even it's just on a. We got our control room guy saying he's falling asleep.
We just had a huge message of the screen.
He types to us. So we'll wrap up our ideas here pretty here in the next minute or two. But yeah, I mean, this is. I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours still to go, but this is information that is going to get suppressed continually and repeatedly.
Well, we began from the fact that 8 billion people in the world is exactly why information is slipping away. It's impossible to control 8 billion people. People somewhere will find out the truth and bring it to other people. Like, internet was built by very smart people, not for somebody else to take over and control it. It was deliberately developed by very smart people to pass information to each other. Like, during the Second World War, during the World War II, when Americans had nuclear weapons, Russians desperately wanted to get their own, because they knew if they don't have that, nuclear war may start. And you know who helped them to develop that? Those were American scientists, because they knew to avoid war, you have to pass this information to the other part. That way there is balance. And that way, very smart people, they can predict things a little bit further than regular people.
Right.
And they building these things with special windows inside of the internet for people to be able to pass this information. So when we presented facts that shocked those geologists online, because, we got bombarded with also geologists trying to debunk Creative Society.
You hit their egos hard. Yeah.
Very hard. And especially the response videos. When we posted responses, because they were thinking they're too smart when they started posting, underwater volcanoes will never blow up because there is a water pressure, there is too much. And then we scientifically explained exactly how the mechanism works when extremely hot flows of lava separate water into hydrogen and oxygen. And that bubble has a pressure that 100 times bigger than the water pressure, and that creates explosion on the bottom of the ocean. That shocked them. They simply, some of them blocked us, so no one responded. There was no response, because you cannot respond to something, especially when you look like a fool for not knowing the facts in your own field of research. Same thing happened with deep focused earthquakes. What we talked about, those tectonic plates, they only go a certain amount of kilometers. And one of them said, Mariana Trench is a place where very deep earthquakes can happen up to 500 kilometers. And that's what classically they would use to think. But now they register them in the liquefied area. Earthquakes happening at 750 kilometers depth. And there is nothing, there is only elastic material over there. There is nothing to have traction against each other. So it puzzles everyone what is happening. And that is only...
I'll tell you what, the devil and his minions just built a new machine down there, and they're turning it on.
Figuratively speaking, yes.
Figuratively speaking. Absolutely. So the messages, like you said, there's back windows designed for people to keep getting the internet and using it for truth and communication. So,
Absolutely.
Anyone listening, just go make content. Go talk about what you believe to be is the truth. The truth doesn't need you. The truth will eventually come out, but that's how it comes out, is through the discourse and the rhetoric.
And you need a community. You know, by yourself, there are so many conspiracy theories that you're just gonna dive into this rabbit hole, and you might lose your mind trying to distinguish what is true, what is hidden information, and what is absolute bunkers. That's why you need people to work with you, double check on everything.
Yeah, man. I'm definitely going bonkers, man. I don't think the dinosaurs are real anymore, man.
I have no idea.
They're all ancient, giant human bones and dragon bones.
I've
giant
seen the
human.
Giants
It's a cover-up.
Pictures of giants at the beginning of the century. Those are trippy. I've seen those.
Oh, after the last reset, the Chicago Fairs, mud floods. Let's wrap.
That's huge. Have you seen
yeah,
the picture?
let's wrap it.
And the electric vehicles that could drive up to 500 miles in the end of the 19th century.
The flying trash cans.
Haven't seen those.
Oh. You know what I'm talking about, Jason? No?
We have a lot
think he's
of
falling asleep
materials
too.
for another episode.
I can't hear you. Is his mic off? Oh, his mic is off.
Or technical support.
Something.
Switch it off. Oh, we still cannot hear you.
We still cannot hear you. Yeah.
Is it
Well,
working?
we love you, Mr. Jason Bell.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We can tell everyone's getting here pretty tired. What is it, midnight 30?
Thank you so much.
And hey, thank all you guys out there for watching. If you want to keep updated with what's going on, you can check Taliy's Creative Society
we have
out.
creativesociety.com. There is join us button. You can find out about the project. You can find what kind of stuff we do. You can follow us on social media. Of course, Twitter is the beacon of the free speech. Thank you so much for showing that on the screen. Yes, our TikTok accounts and everything, and you can see Mr. Jason Bell right there, and our other participants. It's always some interesting information about absolutely different fields of research, from archaeology to science to technologies and healthcare. You can find a lot of interesting information, and a lot of people's attention have been put into putting all of the pieces of this puzzle together. And let's see, if we're always welcoming anyone to join and present your information and help us with finding out how can we actually implement the society in which we would love to live, with no fear of tomorrow, where safety guaranteed, where we can live and enjoy our lives. So thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks for joining. And Mr. Bell, thank you for joining as well, if he's still hanging around. And everybody out there, give us a like on the video. It's free. Come on. Help out. Have a good night.